Hi, and welcome to today's live reading from Key West Dead by Mark Nolan, presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. This is Chapter 1, Prologue. After midnight, on a motor yacht anchored offshore of Key West, a man set out scuba gear in preparation for a night dive. Before diving, he launched a black quadcopter drone into the night sky, flying without lights and carrying an upside-down, empty 5-gallon bucket he'd spray-painted black. When the drone arrived at a nearby marina, he watched its video feed on his phone as it approached a surveillance camera on top of a pole. By carefully controlling the drone, he lowered its bucket over the camera, then tapped his phone screen to release the claw and leave the bucket in place. Once the CCTV camera was blinded, he flew the drone slowly over the deserted marina as he looked for any potential witnesses. It was not a live-aboard marina, so boat owners were not allowed to spend the night, and he didn't see any signs of life. Hovering the drone over one particular sailing sloop in its boat slip, he double-checked the live video stream and was pleased to note the camera's thermal imaging feature didn't pick up any heat signatures. So far, so good. Satisfied with his reconnaissance, he brought his drone flying back and landed it on his boat's aft deck. After donning a BC buoyancy compensator, together with vest, air tank, fins, mask, and regulator, he carefully placed around his neck a lanyard that was attached to an airtight black plastic cigar travel humidor about the size of a shoebox. Easing into the water, he swam below the surface out of sight and finned toward the marina and target, dragging the box along with him. Upon surfacing next to the sailboat, he quietly climbed onto the dock and then on board. All remained quiet and still at the marina as he removed his fins, used a lockpick gun to open the hatch, went inside, and moved towards the galley. Finding the stove and oven, he removed his lanyard and opened the oven door to set the plastic case inside, where it would be out of sight and close to the propane tank. Handling it gingerly, he unlatched the lid and flipped it back to expose the improvised explosive device. Next, he pressed and held the power button on an attached cell phone until it lit up, ready to receive his call and set off the detonator. "Happy honeymoon," he whispered. Once he'd closed the oven door, he moved inside and stepped into his fins. Then, lowering himself off the dock and into the water, he swam away beneath the surface. Chapter 2. I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea in the sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by. From the poem Sea Fever by John Masefield. Key West, Florida, Hyatt-centric resort. Jake Wolf mingled and made small talk with wedding guests, but he felt a strange premonition of danger. Ever since having a near-death experience when he'd almost drowned, he'd developed a sixth sense. Right now, he noted a familiar tingle at the back of his neck that often preceded the threat of violence. This was unusual because he normally felt right at home in the Florida Keys. He'd visited countless times to enjoy boating, fishing, and scuba diving. In addition, many other wedding guests were fellow veterans. They'd all served together in the Marines and remained close friends. The abundance of highly trained former military people in attendance made this hotel one of the safest places in Key West at that moment. He looked around as guests continued arriving at the idyllic Hyatt-centric Key West resort. It was an upscale hotel with cheerful and helpful employees, so he wondered what could possibly be worrying him. Gazing out a window toward the Gulf of Mexico, his instincts told him the resort was not a problem at all, though something else might present a threat out there on the water. Stepping out of the air-conditioned hotel and into the hot and humid air of the veranda, he studied various boats in the near distance. Nothing stood out as unusual to his naked eye, but he wished for a pair of binoculars to take a closer look. It was reassuring to feel the weight of the inside waistband, IWB, holster on his right side at the 3 o'clock position, where he carried a subcompact 9mm SIG P365 pistol. On one of his previous visits to the Keys, he'd obtained a Florida concealed carry permit and bought the P365 for use in Florida's tropical climate. With the gun's compact profile, his dark blue Hawaiian shirt kept it well hidden, and the SIG could fire when wet, so it was great for carrying on a boat or near the seashore. He knew that his best friend, Terrell Hayes, was carrying a handgun too, along with a police homicide detective's badge. Jake's girlfriend, Sarah Chance, strolled outside and approached him. An attractive woman in her late 20s and approaching 30, with a warm smile, brown eyes that sparkled at him, and brunette hair styled with blonde highlights. She wore a figure-flattering sundress that buttoned up the front and ended at mid-thigh, and went shoeless like everyone else at the barefoot wedding. Standing there, backlit by a bright window for a moment, the light fabric of her dress appeared see-through and displayed an outline of her yoga-toned body underneath. She came close, looked up at his 6-foot-tall self, and stood on her tiptoes to kiss him. Then she gazed into his eyes without blinking and said, "How are you doing, Jake?" Sometimes he found her so captivating she took his breath away. "Doing great, and checking on Cody," he said, putting an arm around her waist. She too reached out for him, touched the concealed weapon under his shirt for a moment, and simply blinked her hand higher on his back, not blinking an eye, as she already knew the gun was there. Standing at the veranda railing, they looked down at a boat named Escaped. He'd rented on Airbnb in lieu of a hotel room. The motor yacht was a 36-foot cruiser's yacht 3650, built way back in 1997, but nicely updated and refurbished, including recent detailing. For the wedding, Jake had the Escape temporarily berthed at one of the Hyatt Resort's handful of boat slips near the end of a private wooden dock. Air conditioning kept the boat cool inside for his dog Cody. Jake had also filled 3 bowls with fresh water for the former war dog he'd adopted. Cody trotted out of the propped open door onto the aft deck and barked once at Jake and Sarah. "Good eyes," Jake said, smiling and waving at Cody. The golden retriever and yellow Labrador mixed dog sit down under a shade cover and watch the couple above him, not appearing to mind the sweltering tropical weather too much. In the past, Cody had served as an IED detector dog in the Marines on overseas deployments to scorching hot and dry deserts. Jake imagined Cody might prefer the moist humidity of these islands and marinas with their salty ocean air. Sarah used a square cocktail napkin to dab at a drop of sweat on her forehead near her hairline. Jake noticed how the faint scent of enticing perfume rose from her warm skin and hung in the air between them. "The heat is stifling tonight," she said. "Glad I'm not wearing a fur coat like our boy." Jake smiled at how she called his dog our boy. He glanced at where the setting sun hung low in the sky, glowing like a heat lamp in a sauna. Terrell was complaining that the temperature and humidity are both in the high 90s, he said. "Cody will be fine as long as he drinks plenty of water and avoids getting too much sun," Sarah told him, calling on her experience as a veterinarian. "This resort is a beautiful venue, but I think I'd like it better in the winter." "True, but August is the start of lobster season, and I visited the Keys often at this time of year to go free diving for bugs, as we call them," he said. "This summer, heat is the price of paradise, and one I'll gladly pay." He frowned when a quadcopter hobby drone flew past, taking video of the picturesque beach, shoreline, and boats. Cody barked at the intruder. The dog was not a fan of the flying, swooping, buzzing interlopers. Jake turned and signaled to a passing waiter. "What may I get for you, sir?" the waiter asked cheerfully. "I have a question," Jake said, pointing at the sky. "Do you know if that drone belongs to the resort or maybe the wedding photographer?" The waiter appeared surprised to see the flying contraption invading his guest's privacy. "No, we don't allow drones on the resort property," he said. "It might belong to someone at Mallory Square who's flying it up and down the beach, but I'll inform hotel security." He pulled out his phone and made a call as he walked away. The passing drone stopped and hovered for a moment, aiming its attached camera lens at them. Jake experienced a flashback of past encounters with small armed drones that had tried to kill him. This one didn't appear to be armed, but he used his left hand to take a phone video while his right hand slipped under his shirt and rested on the pistol at his waistline. The drone turned and sped away, flying along the waterfront toward the Key West historic seaport and disappearing out of sight. Jake sent the phone video to Terrell and then stared in the direction the device had flown. In the recent past, he and Terrell had witnessed the threats against veteran funerals, but never weddings. Not yet, anyway. Am I overreacting? Thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed it. Check the book out.